When the Roman Empire expanded into Britain in the 1st century, it did not arrive to a unified land or a single people. Instead, the island was home to numerous Celtic tribes, each controlling its own territory, often engaged in rivalry or open conflict with neighboring groups. Rome did not create Britain as a nation, but it introduced something far more enduring: centralized administration, long-distance infrastructure, written law, and the concept of territorial governance under a single authority. Roman rule in Britain began in the year 43 under Emperor Claudius. Over time, the Romans established Britain as a province of the empire, governed from urban centers that connected the island to the wider Roman world. Roads were built not only for trade, but primarily for military movement. Forts, towns, and supply lines allowed Rome to project power across much of the island, especially in the south and east. Hadrian's Wall, constructed in the 2nd century, marked the northern limit of Roman control. It was not merely a defensive structure, but a political statement, defining where Roman authority ended and where uncontrolled territory began. Beyond it lived peoples the Romans referred to as Picts, who remained largely outside imperial administration. For nearly 4 centuries, Roman Britain functioned as part of a vast imperial system. Latin was used in administration, Roman law shaped governance, and towns like Londinium, Eboracum, and Verulamium became regional centers of trade and authority. Yet Roman control depended heavily on continuous military presence. Where troops were withdrawn, Roman influence faded quickly. By the late 4th century, the Roman Empire faced increasing pressure from multiple fronts. Internal political instability, economic strain, and invasions closer to the imperial core forced Rome to prioritize survival over distant provinces. Britain, far from the Mediterranean heartland, became increasingly difficult to defend. Around the year 410, Roman authority in Britain effectively ended. There was no single event or final battle that marked the collapse. Instead, Roman administration simply ceased. Troops were recalled. Officials disappeared. Coinage stopped circulating. Towns lost their purpose as centers of imperial governance. The departure of Rome did not result in immediate anarchy, but it created a power vacuum. Without centralized authority, local leaders assumed control. Some were descendants of Roman officials, others were tribal elites. Over time, urban life declined. Many towns were abandoned or reduced to small settlements. Long-distance trade diminished, and written records became rare. This period marked a fundamental transformation. Britain shifted from an imperial province to a fragmented landscape of local rule. Political power became personal rather than institutional. Control of land depended on military strength and loyalty, not on imperial law. During this same period, pressure from across the North Sea increased. Germanic groups from regions corresponding to modern Denmark, northern Germany, and the Low Countries had long maintained contact with Britain. Some had served as mercenaries under Roman command. As Roman defenses collapsed, migration accelerated. These groups are collectively known as the Anglo-Saxons, though they were not a single unified people. They included Angles, Saxons, Jutes, and related populations, each with distinct identities. Early arrivals were sometimes invited by British leaders seeking protection against raids. Over time, these arrangements shifted into permanent settlement. Unlike Roman occupation, Anglo-Saxon expansion was gradual and decentralized. Settlers established villages, cultivated land, and expanded through a combination of conflict, displacement, and assimilation. Archaeological evidence shows a steady transformation of material culture. Roman-style buildings disappeared. New forms of housing, tools, and burial practices emerged. Language changed as well. Latin declined rapidly outside limited religious contexts. Germanic dialects spread across much of eastern and southern Britain, eventually forming the basis of Old English. This linguistic shift marked a deeper cultural transformation than political change alone. By the 6th century, several Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had emerged. These included Kent, Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex, East Anglia, Sussex, and Essex. Modern historians refer to this arrangement as the Heptarchy, though in reality the number and influence of kingdoms fluctuated over time. These kingdoms were not nations in the modern sense. Borders were fluid and often undefined. Power shifted through warfare, alliances, dynastic marriages, and personal loyalty. Kings ruled as long as they could maintain control through force and reputation. Religion became a key factor in political development. The Anglo-Saxons were initially pagan, worshipping gods associated with war, fate, and nature. In the late 6th and 7th centuries, Christianity returned to Britain through missionary efforts from Rome and Ireland. Conversion occurred unevenly, often beginning with kings who saw strategic advantage in aligning with Christian Europe. Christianity reintroduced literacy, written law, and record-keeping. Monasteries became centers of learning, administration, and economic activity. Religious institutions helped stabilize political authority and provided ideological support for kingship. By the 8th century, competition among the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms intensified. Mercia rose to prominence under powerful rulers, dominating much of central England. Northumbria controlled vast territories in the north. Over time, however, Wessex emerged as the most resilient southern kingdom. The rulers of Wessex developed more organized systems of governance, taxation, and military defense. This growing structure would prove critical in the centuries to come. Yet, even as consolidation advanced, England remained politically fragmented. It was during this fragile stage that new external threats arrived. From the late 8th century onward, Viking raids targeted monasteries, ports, and river settlements. These attacks exposed the same weaknesses that had followed Rome's departure centuries earlier. However, the response was no longer passive. Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had developed enough structure to adapt. Resistance to Viking settlement forced military reform, cooperation, and centralization. The struggle against Viking expansion would ultimately accelerate the process of unification. The transition from Roman Britain to Anglo-Saxon England was not a sudden replacement, but a long and complex transformation. Empires did not simply vanish. They left behind roads, cities, institutions, and ideas that shaped what followed. Modern England did not emerge from a single founding event, but from centuries of collapse, adaptation, and survival. The absence of Roman rule created the conditions for new societies to form. Borders were shaped not by maps, but by power, culture, and necessity. This pattern would repeat across Europe. As empires fell, new identities emerged. Control of land became the foundation of political authority. From these early struggles, the concept of a nation slowly began to take form. In the next episode, this evolving world will face its greatest challenge yet, as Viking armies transform from raiders into rulers, reshaping the future of England and redefining power in medieval Europe.